Hello again and welcome to the 8 December 2017 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our special guest today is Elizabeth Tanner, the new Director of Rhode Island Department of Business Regulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I call you Liz?
Yes, please.
Acceptable? Okay, good. Very recently you were the Executive Vice President. Well, wait a minute, before I get into your professional background, let me talk to me about your personal background.
So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but
Okay.
I went to the University of Rhode Island and fell in love with both Rhode Island and a special person that lived in Bristol, and I never left ever since.
Okay, that's great. And I noticed from your bio that you went to URI and then you went to law school.
Yes.
And
So
where was that at?
Western New England University in Springfield, Mass.
Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. So you're relatively long-term Bristol resident. We were talking about that earlier. Let's start with your last job, the one you just left. I mean, I know everything's coming quick and fast here to you. You were the Executive Vice President of Client Services for the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the layman here, what does that corporation do?
So the Commerce Corporation is the state's quasi-state agency. We're not a full state agency, where we focus on economic development, whether it be current businesses in the state or businesses out of the state. Those who want to grow their business in some way or businesses that are having troubles, we help them out in any form or fashion. In addition to the things you hear publicly often about the incentives, we also have a lot of financial programs. There's also folks who do some energy programs. There's some other folks in the research and development sector. And then we refer out also to a lot of the resources that are out there, whether they be business engagement centers or incubators or technical assistance providers. There's actually a ton of information and a ton of free or almost free services for business that most people don't know about, so we try to make them aware of it.
Okay, so part of this is advice, I guess. When people want to start up a business, they contact the corporation and get some ideas. Do you also do funding for people? Do you provide loans?
We do. So very often we tend to be the bank of last resort. So if you can't get, we don't want to compete with banks, so if you cannot get a loan through a traditional lender, you can come to us through our Small Business Assistance Program, where you can get loans as low as $2,000 up to $25,000 for microloans, and then they have them from $25,000 to $250,000. We also have very complicated programs that only states provide, such as various kinds of mortgage insurance and bond financing and things that are a little complicated, but the state is the person who does that for a business.
It all does seem, for the layman who's never gone through the process, to be very complicated to me.
It can be very complicated. Some of the more sophisticated businesses doing transactions, they need a different kind of help.
One of the things you said, it's a quasi-governmental organization. What does that mean? And why isn't it part of the Rhode Island state government?
So pretty much every state has some sort of economic development arm to focus on all business needs, not just small. One of the biggest misconceptions we hear about the Commerce Corporation is that they only handle big out-of-state businesses, and the reality is 91% of the people we talk to are in-state, and a full 85% of the businesses we talk to have 25 employees or less, and of that, a full 45% of that 85% have 5 employees or less. So we talk to businesses of all sizes. The Commerce Corporation falls under the umbrella of a new sort of scenario where you have an executive office of commerce, which was created under the Chafee administration. And so Secretary Stephen Pryor is actually the first Secretary of Commerce, and that is a full state agency. And underneath that you have the Commerce Corporation, as well as the Department of Business Regulation, housing, and a couple other items fall under there as well, so that you have someone overseeing all economic development areas in their entirety.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing seems very confusing to a person that's not in business trying to do this.
Well, I think it is because it's new. It's only been like this for not even 3 years yet, so it's a new concept in Rhode Island.
Everything's kind of changing. That's one of the reasons it probably seems complicated.
Yeah.
One of your initiatives was to create a business navigation center. Could you explain what this is and why it was needed?
So the Commerce Corporation has always had a team of people who are there to help businesses in some way. But what we were finding is a lot of people just didn't know that that existed. So we branded it the Business Navigation Center, and we continue to have a team of people who will help you find location, who will help you with any startup questions you might have, connect you to the resources that are out there, or the multitude of programs that exist both in state and out of state. And by having that team of people, they sort of assess your situation to see what works for you. Are you interested in growing? Are you having problems? What are your needs? And sometimes it's just, where's the form I need to fill out, or who do I need to talk to? We do all of those things.
Yeah, people can go in, and can they get access to that via your website?
Website,
the Commerce Corporation.
phone call to make an appointment. We'll come see you. You can come see us. We can
Yeah.
do it by phone, by email. It's really entirely up to you.
Okay, that's great. I wonder if you could just walk me through a typical process. Let's say I'm a guy, I got maybe, my idea is to have a home development or home construction or repair business. What do I need to do?
So that's a good question. There's actually sort of two pieces to that. There's, do you really want to open up a business, and understanding what it takes to open up a business? And then there's the filling out the forms to actually open up a business. There are a ton of resources for both of those. There are great technical assistance providers that will help you understand, do you really know what you're getting into to open a business? Do you understand the books, the marketing that goes along with it, everything you need to do to run the business? Because you might be a great construction person and good with your hands, but if you can't manage your books or get business because you can't market yourself, your business is going to have a hard time. So there's a ton of resources, classes, counseling, mentoring, things that you can do both through Commerce and our resource partners. The flip side of that is, now I'm ready, I know I want to become a business, how do I actually become a business? And those forms are very readily found on the Rhode Island Secretary of State's website, as well as tax forms, both with the IRS as well as state taxation. And then depending on what you do, you may have additional employees. So if you, additional forms to fill out. So if you have employees, you'll have extra forms you'll need to fill out, potentially workers' compensation insurance. If you're gonna be a contractor, there's a contractor's license you'd have to get. Sometimes you have to get licenses or registrations, but it all depends on exactly what you're doing and what your business is.
It just seems to me that there's overlap between what the towns or cities require and what the state requires.
So it's interesting because while I wouldn't necessarily call it overlap, sometimes you do have to do things on the local, the state, and sometimes even the federal level. But again, it depends on what you're doing. Take the example of a contractor. To set up your business, it's just a state function. You would only be dealing with the state, although you would need to at least get your tax identification number from the federal government. But sometimes there are duplicative licenses between a municipality and a state. We are seeing less and less of that, but occasionally there's overlap. But otherwise, it's just hard to understand that there's state, federal, and municipal obligations. But again, it all depends on what you're doing, and there's no one-way answer for that.
Again, it seems very complicated, but is there anything you all can do in the DBR, Department of Business Regulation, to kind of smooth that out a little bit, or at least cut down some of the dual reporting things? And
well, one of the biggest complaints in that area was exactly from contractors. They were very frustrated with how hard it was to get permits from both the municipality and the state. So we've actually created what's called the e-permitting system, and it's now live and active in 18 of our 39 municipalities. We're hoping to have the majority of them on at some point in 2018. I think we have another 4 to go on within the next few weeks. And what that is it allows a contractor or builder to order their fire and building permits through an electronic system, and it connects both the state and the municipality, which is really the beauty of it, because normally you'd have to go from one place to another and you'd have to go to 2 different places. Now it's an electronic system that you can order everything online. And as far as we've understanding, it's the only place in the country where the state and the municipalities are working together to process permits.
Really?
So we're really excited about that.
well, a lot of other states have counties too in between, so I guess it gets even more complicated in those states. Yeah, that's one of the things that I thought was interesting, is that not all, the big government and probably state government, you can do a lot of stuff online. You can even submit forms and all that stuff. Why isn't everybody picked up on this? I don't think we can do this yet in Portsmouth, for example, for our local things, dog licenses, etc.
It's interesting you bring up dog licenses, because yes, that's something we're looking at. The biggest answer is money. You're looking at implementing a system that you've never had before versus the answer that we get often is, but we've always done it this way.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
Getting people to understand you don't do it that way just because you've always done it. And paper, is much cheaper than technology. So it's a matter of getting the people to accept the cost. But what we're finding is that business owners are more than happy to pay an extra couple of bucks to be able to do it online versus having to drive physically to go somewhere.
Sure.
So we are trying to expand the use of the systems to include far more things online. The state of Rhode Island actually is pretty good about allowing you to renew things online. It's the initial application where you usually have a lot of attachments that we are lacking, and we're really looking into that.
That's true. Yeah, it's, I think our town, Portsmouth, is trying to get there, but it just takes time to transition over from one to the other. For example, I was on a committee, and I received my thing to to renew my application. I could download it and print it, but I still had to send it in by mail. It just.
And that's an improvement. Many of the communities don't have any forms available online.
Yeah, it used to be you had to go into the town hall to get the form. Yeah. You started when you were there something that's called the Municipality Initiative to help towns and cities, presumably, with some of these issues we're talking about. Portsmouth was one of the beneficiaries of this program. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So while we're doing lots of things on the state level to make it easier and simpler, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on the local level. So we started a program to introduce them to the concept of lean, L-E-A-N, which is sort of like going on a diet. It's sort of, let's take a look at how you do things currently and say, how can we make it more simple? So they use a whole lot of Post-it notes and say, well, when I go to town hall to open up my business, I go to the clerk's office and I fill out a form and I write a check. And then depending on what kind of business I have, I go to another place and another place and another place, and I have to go to them consecutively, one after the other, chronologically, filling out a form, writing a check along the way. So what this initiative did was to say, why can't we create at least one form that highlights most of the information that's needed, attempt to write out one check depending on the kind of business that you're creating, and then have the clerk's office send it out to everybody who needs to touch it. So whether it's fire, building, water, police, depending on the business you're creating, now they can at least all work on it at the same time rather than you, the business owner, having to go from place to place to place. So that's what that initiative was about, was to offer up a lean consultant to come in who helps you create that singular form, helps you create that efficient process behind the scenes, and then also encourages you to take a look at what you have currently for your licenses and permits and determine, do you still need them? Can you combine them? Can you drop the fee, or are you losing money on it for the town and you should really increase the fee? All of those kinds of things. So we have 23 of our municipalities have gone through that exercise, and the results have been amazing for them just to be introduced to that concept, and again to realize you don't have to always do it the way you've always done it.
Yeah. Well, our director for business development, Rich Silipsky, is probably the guy on our end that's working with you or with the corporation on this. So that sounds great. It sounds like the state really is here to help you in this case, anyway.
Yeah, and Rich has been great about taking it a step further and trying to say, what can we do more? How can we create some of these simple solutions that we call just do it's? So if something can just be fixed, why can't we just fix it? Why have we always done it the way it's always been? Yeah. So I know he's been pretty active in that area as well.
Yeah, there's been several other issues that he's been working on in the same philosophy there, I think, in town. How long did you work at the Commerce Corporation, and how do you think your job there prepared you for your new job?
Well, it's been great. I was there for about 2.5 years, and between that and my experience as an attorney, where I've opened up several hundred businesses and had businesses myself where I've felt the frustrations of small business owners, I like to say that in this job I get to fix all the stuff that made me crazy. So I have a great love and appreciation for that. So between working as the attorney, having many clients suffering their pains, and then being at Commerce, where we really spent a lot of time listening to the business owner's problems, we were able to gather a large wealth of information of where the real problems are at. So while we're still addressing those, now I get to take that information over to DBR and look at it from a very different perspective, because the Department of Business Regulation regulates and licenses many different professions. So now we can take a look and say, where can we become more efficient? How can we eliminate some of the burdensome costs or requirements to get that license? And so we've been starting to take an active look at that.
Yeah, it sounds like you got the perfect background for this then, essentially. In this new position, you're going to be in charge of the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulations. What does the DBR do, and how is it organized?
So this is my first week there, so let's see if I can get it right. But the Department of Business Regulation, again, they regulate certain kinds of businesses, so it's an interesting mix. So there's banking, there's insurance, and securities, so some pretty sophisticated business types, and this is out of state and in state who are doing business in Rhode Island. But then you also have medical marijuana, you have commercial licensing, so you have auto body repair, you have gaming, so we have boxing and mixed martial arts and horse racing. So it's really fascinating the wide variety that they have, as well as your design professionals. You have your architects, engineers, accountants, landscape architects, things like that. So it's a wide variety of business types.
How big of a staff are you going to have at DBR?
So there's currently 88 employees there. We are actually in the middle of a merger, though, to include fire and building under the DBR umbrella, and so that would add an additional set of employees there.
Okay, now how does this work? Does certain people, for example, work in the medical marijuana issue, and that's kind of their job, and then other people,
For the most part, we have divisions.
Yeah.
It gets a little muddier in the commercial licensing area just because they're all sort of doing the same tasks, but for different professions. But for the most part, yeah, we have separate divisions that handle certain sections.
Yeah. When do you actually take the job?
So Monday was my first, well, I have several different official days, but Monday was my first day that I was a paid employee there.
Okay, so you're officially in the chair.
Yes,
there.
yes.
Okay, that's good. How does the DVR, and this may seem like a silly question, but how does it relate to the Commerce Corporation, for example?
Yeah, so they both fall under that umbrella with the Executive Office of Commerce with Secretary Pryor, and they work very closely at this idea of trying to build and grow businesses. So what we've done is the part of commerce where we fix the problems and are trying to make it better to do business has never really been any state function. So we're hoping to combine commerce and DBR in that aspect, where that commerce can give us the problems that they're hearing from businesses, and DBR will then have the ability to come up with a mechanism to make them better. So we've done a large part of that already at Commerce, but DBR is really the place where you have far more authority and ability to work with other state agencies to make those changes. So that's where I'd like to go with it. We'll see, but right now we have some employees that are working at both locations so that we don't lose the input from the businesses that we really need.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And this is all since the Secretary for Commerce position was formed.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we're sort of moving into the modern age here in Rhode Island. Unbelievable. As the director of the Department of Business Regulation, who do you report to?
So I now report directly to Secretary Pryor and have the ability to work very closely with him, and he reports directly to Governor Raimondo. So,
okay, so that's kind of the chain of command.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great, and especially this is a fairly recent, like you say, 3 or 4 year old initiative. Mm-hmm. It sounds really good. You know, I noticed that you put out, or the DBR at least has put out a strategic plan that goes through 2018, I think, and one of the goals was, they call it a vision in the plan, but one of the goals was for the Rhode Island's business regulation to become a top 10 state. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but how are we doing in that regard?
Well, if you look at the business friendliness poll that comes out by some of the major newsmakers, CNBC in particular, we have actually gone up quite a few states in the business friendliness factor. So some of the things that bring us down are a whole transportation and taxes and things that are far more complicated, I think, to resolve. But as far as the business friendliness side, we have continued to go up pretty consistently in the last few years. And I think a lot of that is the big change in customer service. So you hear often that regulations are the problem. Regulatory reform, burdensome regulations. But we've done, by listening and by spending a lot of time with businesses, what we've realized is it's almost never actually the regulations that are a problem. It's far more about customer service, bad processes, doing things the way we've always done, and then some legislative changes. So by working on each of those areas, which don't cost a ton of money, and it's really about changing a culture, I think you're starting to see some real changes there. So that's been Amica has actually also done customer service training for most of the employees in the state, and I think you're really starting to see a big turnaround there.
Amica, the insurance company?
Yes, they have.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What do you think the chances are of Rhode Island landing some of these big companies that would have a lot of employees in the state?
So we've done very well already. You know, we have GE, Virgin Pulse. We just had Infosys bringing in 500 jobs. So those are significant wins. But we also need to emphasize the work that we do for the small businesses, and that unfortunately gets neglected often in the news. But every day we're working with businesses who are bringing on 1, 2 new employees that they've never thought that they could ever have before, or looking for a new location, or building a new space, or expanding into international work, or expanding into doing government work, and growing and using all the programs that are available. So while you don't read a lot about that, there's a lot of great work being done to help small businesses.
Yeah, that's great, because there are a lot of them here, and probably in every town there's small businesses around, and a lot of them seem to be struggling. When the economy gets better, in theory, maybe it'll, kind of all work out very well. What do you think your biggest challenges are in going forward in this job?
I think it is part of the change of the culture, but this is the way we've always done it mentality, getting folks to stop and think. And very often we ask the question of who is your audience, who is your customer, and the answer to the question is taxpayers. So they're thinking about it from that perspective versus their neighbor or their cousins or their family within their own home. And so I'm always pushing the golden rule. So if you can treat your customers like you would want to be treated, do you really want to fill out all this paperwork? Do you understand how many times I have to go to town hall to do this? If we can try to impart that and get people to change that culture, and that goes along with being empowered. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who say, I want to change the form, but I don't know if I can. And then we go and talk to their bosses, and they say, "Oh yeah, yes, absolutely, if you think that's what's best."
Yeah.
So it has to come from the bottom up, from changing culture, but you can't do that without having the leadership say, "You're empowered. Make the appropriate changes that you think are important."
And you feel like you've got the support of your Secretary of Commerce and the governor?
I have to tell you, I don't think that I could have done anything that I've been able to accomplish, as well as what Commerce RI has been able to accomplish, without the support of Secretary Pryor and Governor Raimondo. They have said this is one of their key priorities, is to make it easier to do business in Rhode Island, and we're doing as much as we can to focus on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of the government actually helping, and it just, I always get back to the basic issue is, like, what else do you think we can do to try to make our local businesses, make it easier for them? You talked about a few of them, trying to streamline things, make it user-friendly. How can the towns help, and how can they work with you?
So we did do a lean training for the municipalities back in March. Matter of fact, GE sent in 6 of their executives to teach that over a 2-day period up at Bryant University, who was kind enough to host us. And we were able to introduce this idea of changing the culture and leadership down. The key, again, is the leadership. So getting the town managers to recognize that this is important. They can save significant dollars at the local level. People like it. They feel better about it. We started that municipality initiative in a community where one of the clerks who had been working there for, I think it was 28 years, said, no, everything's fine, we don't need to change anything. And we said, give it a chance, just try, let us know what you think. And we were all done. They have a report out where they present what their results are to not just the staff, but the leadership of the town as well as the town council. And she got a little emotional when she said, I was the biggest naysayer. I said we couldn't make change. I said everything was fine the way we had done it before. But having gone through this exercise, it's made me realize this is why I came to work in town government, to help my family, to help my friends, to help my community. And now I've made a significant difference.
Yeah.
So just hearing things like that makes you feel a whole lot better.
I bet it does, because, we're Rhode Island, we're old-fashioned kind of, and you have to show me it's going to do some good.
Yeah.
I guess another question that occurs to me is that part of your mission, in fact, a big part of your mission, is kind of enforcing the law, essentially, the laws that are on the books. How do you relate to our state government, Senate, House, etc. Because especially when you're talking about laws, changing laws gets hard. How do you relate to them? Do you have to go for hearings and things before these guys, or?
So that'll be interesting because we're actually putting forward some really significant information that we received. So when we first started at Commerce, we did what I called a roadshow, and we went out to see every single chamber, trade organization, merchants association, rotaries, BNIs, everybody we could possibly go talk to get that input. And from that input, we created a list of about 200 most common complaints. And of those two of them were significant, and we handled those right away. And the rest, we sort of said, all right, let's take a look and see what it is. And again, it wasn't the regulations. It's mostly fixing processes. But we do have a list of about 30 legislative items, and we're working pretty heavy on those now to be able to present them to the legislature this year. And some of them are really simple, removing notarization requirements from form, or the ability to collect less information from hairdressers because they have to get a special zoning letter from the town that has to be sealed by the town. So some of them are pretty simple, we think, but some of them are very complicated, such as right now we charge 18% interest on taxes, past due taxes that are due. Also, same thing with biweekly pay. We're the only state in the country where you must be paid on a weekly basis. There's a lot of businesses that break that rule already, but then there's another one in between that we're trying to look at this year, is something for food trucks. It is very hard to be a food truck operator in Rhode Island. You have to go to all 39 municipalities if you want to operate in there. We're trying to think of a way to both give the municipality their power that they would like to have, but to try to make it simpler for them from an administrative side. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how we move on with that.
Yeah, I would think, again, it's the way we've done this stuff in the past, and a lot of these regulations were written way back, probably. And probably nobody's even thought too hard about changing them. But it's great to know we got some advocate pushing this stuff through our state government. We're very lucky here because I think our representatives are all very pro-business development. And so I think that'll help. You've given us a great look at what you do. Do you have anything else you'd like to say just before we conclude? We're down to about a minute. Anything else you'd like to say in general about the DBR or where we're going?
Well, I'll say if you're having a bad experience, you need to let somebody know about your bad experience. If you're trying to find access to resources, and you call the state, but if you're nervous about that, the best thing you could possibly do is join a chamber, join a trade organization, join something that is involved with your business, so that you then have a resource to go to find out as many things as you can, because if they don't know the answer, they'll help you find somebody that can. Always encouraging people to do that.
Yeah, we have a organization in Portsmouth called the Portsmouth Business Association, and I imagine that'd be a good place for this connection to take place about state laws and things. I'd like to thank you very much for coming in today. I know you're very busy in the transition, and I think it's great you had the time to come down and join us. I'd also like to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That's all for me right now. We'll see you next time on Portsmouth This Week. Thank you.